All right, composers and performers. In this video, I want to share with you a strategy that I'm currently using to save time with orchestration and also get better results. So here is the section that I want to orchestrate, as I talked about with how to orchestrate piano sketches, okay? So we have the start and we have the end, which we're going to be orchestrating. Notice there's already an amateur suggested by the piano score itself, but probably for the orchestra, I'm going to have to blow it up. I'm going to have to do something so it's not copier-coller, as they say in French, not a copy and paste orchestration. Now, I'm going to set those outer sections, okay, those outer chords, okay, and then I'm going to choose points along the way. So the points that I'm choosing, and don't copy what I'm doing, you have to like make it make sense for you. For me, this first change of harmony right here is I want to set it so that way when I actually the voicing the violin, I have a destination along the way. But I'm going to have to set it in relationship to the beginning and to the end. So what you may do with your orchestration, if you know you want a high climax, you want the violin really high here, and you know you want the violin to start like maybe kind of low, you might want to stay at the same elevation or similar for a long time and then at the ending, accelerate so it's really powerful. But there's many different ways. But the point is you have to start with les extrêmes, as we say in French, and you got to work your way. So this change of harmony is something I will orchestrate the deuxième étape, as we say in French, the second stage. Then the harmony starts to accelerate. So I also want to just set the outer voices, just figure out kind of where it's going, and then this other change here as well. And from there, what we're going to find, which, spoiler alert, I was able to do the voice leading, like it almost just sets itself. When you invest the energy in these like big destinations and then just break it down, you will find that it's just, A, the orchestration is much better, there's a clear path, and B, it's much quicker. In terms of overall hours, I don't know if you necessarily save time in the upfront because you will put more energy and intensity in the beginnings and endings, but nevertheless, you will definitely have just a much better experience and a much better orchestration. Oh, I forgot to mention, those of you who are going to be applying to the orchestration competition that we have at Competitions Allies, we talked about it and how to solve or fix problems in your orchestration. Make sure that you submit it early if you want the extra points. There are extra points available if you submit it early. If you're not sure if you want to do the competition, then by all means take your time. But if you do want to do it and you want to get it done, I will be rewarding early submissions, okay? Wanted to mention that. All right, so here we have the starting section, okay, starting of the section, okay? So first thing I want to do is get the outer voices, and I probably hear them simultaneously. Oh, how is it possible? I think we probably hear these right away, but in the sequence of time, you would put one first. So I already know the cellos and double basses are here because they have the melody, so that's kind of what's driving everything. So obviously I had to figure out what octave the double bass was in. Don't really have any options here because the C below would not be possible. And of course, I have the cellos reinforcing them. You almost always will need to reinforce your double basses, okay? Double bass without an octave doubling or maybe a unison sometimes. In French, you say très creux, okay? It sounds ugly in French. It's just like, it's thin, it's wispy. You got to do something to give it like a volume and depth and clarity, okay? So many times we do it with the cellos. At the same time, I was listening, what is the register that the first violin is in? If it is present, in this case, I have it on that C and the octave. Now, another thing is notice that the violin 1 is on a C and the cellos and double basses are on a C. So they are on an octave. That's going to be different if the violin 1 is on a G. You have to hear, can't be every chord, you don't have the time, but for the major destination, they're not the same. You got to hear what you want, okay? From there, I had to get the middle voices. I wasn't hearing any viola, and then I chose the violin 2. Notice that the violin 2 is on the C and G, violin 1 is on G and C, so they're, French say partage, okay, they're sharing that G, which means they're on the unison there. Now, of course, when it comes to unisons and doublings, this is part of orchestration. This is just like meat and potatoes in orchestration. If you are having a lot of problems with it, okay, the long-term solution is to get better harmony. You work on these things, you start root position chords, as I have on my Fundamentals of Harmony series. You work on it, just super simple. It's really hard, but super simple. And then at the end of the day, you just have a sharper ear. It's not because you want to apply what you learn in harmony studies, because then you get l'orchestration banale, we say in French, you get bland orchestration if you literally just try to follow the rules, but it really sharpens your ear and it gives you information. Okay, this is the doubling that works. This is the unison I like. This unison is maybe better, but this one is a little riskier. It just gives you a lot more options, okay? So here we have another possibility. I have the violin 1 on the C. Okay, so we have 3 different notes for the upper part of the chord. Now, if we were to do a copy and paste of the piano score, right, this is what would result. We talked about that and how to orchestrate piano sketches, right? You can't do copy and paste the orchestra. It does not work. It does not work. You have to reimagine the sound. So if I try to divide those 3 notes into 3 different voices, here's how I might do it. But the violin 1 is too loud, right? It's not balanced. Plus the cellos and double basses have the real melody. So this is not acceptable. Other possibility, same problem. I put the violin 2 on the C and then the violin 1, the VZ. That C in the violin 1 is just way too loud. It's going to draw too much attention in relationship to the other voices. So we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. You have to think about the tessitura that each instrument is going to be placed in. Okay, so I set the orchestration for the beginning, and now I want to set the orchestration for my destination, all right? So again, we do the outer voices, and basses and cellos I was hearing right away. Didn't really have many options with the double bass and which octave it's going to be. You can't do the D below. The D up high was a bit too was definitely way too thin. It would necessitate just a fundamentally different orchestration. Notice that the double bass and cellos are doing D-A, okay? So you got to hear that second note because that's going to be rapid, okay? Because depending on what's happening next, maybe a different register is going to be better. Here I think it works great. Also, another thing, a reminder, I think I talked about this in how to orchestrate piano sketches, is when you're orchestrating, when you're doing the piano sketch, which I think is a necessary étape, in French, a necessary step. You have to already be hearing for orchestra, okay? It can't just be doodling at piano and just, no. You have to already be hearing definitely the melodies, okay, in a general sense of what the accompaniment is doing. Even if you don't write it out, you got to be hearing, okay? So, I mean, you can't have just a melody, a melody, no decision on what instrument's playing. It just can't happen, okay? It's just a recipe for disaster. So here, I have placed my outer voices. So I chose where the violin 1 is going to be placed. What's the highest note? Okay, I have that D, and then right away I place the A below because I want to be consistent. You know, I want that the VZ still. Also notice that we have D in the violin 1 and D in the bass. So you got to hear what is that. So clearly they're octaves apart, okay, versus having the A. From there, I chose my violas, okay? So the violas are on that D in the staff, so we have an octave distance from the viola to the next closest voice, so the highest bass, which is the cellos, okay? I could have put the violas on that A, but I didn't like how it sounded, right? If we look at the strings in this orchestration, clearly it's an elevated register. So you want to be consistent. You don't want to have one voice in a dark register and the other voices in brighter registers. Though the bass often will have a separate role, so basses and cellos, that may not be so adverse, okay? This comes as well from what we call the line of demarcation, okay? So the line of demarcation is an entire video I did. I'm not going to go into it today. Check it out later, but it is fundamentally you can't get good orchestration if you're not thinking about it. It's just impossible, okay? But line demarcation, we're thinking about where is the last register the bass is in, and then what comes next. Because many times you have to be careful what note you double in other voices. Here it's not a problem because the chord is just a very stark and it's a perfect fifth chord. But the most important is I do have to think about those outer voices and then the distance to the next middle voice, Okay, so from there I placed the violas, and then I chose the violin 2. And so notice that the violin 2 is doubling the violin 1 with that A natural. Okay, in this other possibility, notice that we have the violin 1 on the A, okay? And you'll see that I put a line indicating I was listening to, okay, what is it going to sound like if I have the violin 1 against the double bass down there? And of course, I was already hearing the octave with the cello, and I didn't like it. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with it, but it's just I don't like it. Okay, so you got to decide what you want. Okay, and when it comes to these big destination moments, they're not the same. Okay, there's totally different registers. They're totally not the same, but it does have implications of how many instruments you're going to need and what doublings. So this is why I got to spend a lot of time on these major destinations, because if later you realize, it could have been, I like it better here, you have to redo all that orchestration, or you have to keep the orchestration that you don't want. It's better to put more time in the upfront on the major important parts. Now, also notice that we have a fifth and several octaves between the double bass and the violin 1 in this alternate possibility which you didn't use, and I didn't like it. Okay, I wanted to hear that rich, wide octave, maybe because it's a dominant chord. I don't know. Okay, it definitely comes from the hearing that you get from quality harmony studies, okay, in the French style. Now, something that you can do if you want to investigate this phenomenon more is to study Beethoven. But be careful, because study is often a means of procrastination. So be really intelligent. Set a timer, because God forbid you spend 2-3 hours going down a rabbit hole of Beethoven, and then you have 2 minutes to orchestrate your piece. That's not acceptable. Okay, it's great going down those rabbit holes and, oh, wow, it's so amazing. But at the end of the day, you still have to orchestrate the piece, and you still may feel like you don't know what you're doing. Okay, that's going to haunt you your first time. So you got to power through. You got to make it happen. Okay, now, oh yeah, if you want to delve into this more, what I would suggest is very quickly, don't spend too much time, go to Beethoven and look at the opening or ending chords of different movements of his symphonies, anything where there's a 2-2 passage within a movement or anywhere, okay? And just notice the difference based on what the highest voice is doing. So start with the strings, violin 1. If we end the movement with violin 1 has the third in the highest voice, how does that sound? If we end the movement with the violin 1 has the fifth, I don't know if he ever has it, or if he has the root. They're not the same. They're all completely different. And this will be a quick way for you to see what I'm talking about, okay? But ultimately, you got to hear your own orchestration. And this other possibility, notice that I put the violin 2 in a slightly lower register, and it doesn't work, okay? This I talked about as well in the line demarcation video. I called the incongruency of the tessituras. I forgot to mention something. For those of you who might be interested in the orchestration competition that I talked about and how to solve or fix problems in your orchestration video, I did make a kind of explanation video on my website. I think it's not that long. I have all the documents put up so you can read through them, but especially, let's say English isn't your first language and you just want to get a feel for the work required, because it will take a fair amount of work to prepare it, then I have an explanation video on the website. But more importantly, if you are struggling with your orchestration, you're getting stuck a lot, okay, it's going to happen. You get stuck, and I just don't know what I'm doing. I don't understand. I'm frustrated. I know I don't like what I have, but I don't know how to figure it out. Part of that competition, but you don't have to do the competition, is there is a document called How to Solve/Fix Problems in Your Orchestration worksheet. Okay, quite a mouthful. Use that, try that to get out of feeling stuck. So the next side 6, printing it out when you have a moment, keeping it on reserve, and then when you try to orchestrate and like, I can't break through, see if that works, because it worked for me, and so if it works for me, maybe it'll work for you. Okay, so let's get back into it. So here we have what I call incongruency of the tessituras. I talked about this in the line demarcation video. So incongruency of the tessituras, we have double basses and cellos are doing their thing, okay? They don't necessarily need to agree with the upper voices, because we have other voices that help fill in the gaps, and they have a distinct role, okay? But they're in a good register, okay? That's really clear in the staff. Violin ones are in a warm register, very bright and alive. Violas, warm register too, it's not extreme, but they're definitely up there, pushing up. And they almost, looking at where the violas are placed, it almost requires violin twos to be higher, right? It just implies a higher orchestration. So the violin two is in a darker register compared to the other upper strings. This is not consistent, okay? I went into a lot more depth in this in the line demarcation video, and I call it the incongruency of the tessitores. Sounds very scientific, but it's the most accurate way I can describe this phenomenon, so I think I'm going to keep it for now. But this orchestration, it's not offensive, but definitely it's not excellent because we have a clear imbalance. All right, now we want to map out your orchestration, okay? So we have placed the opening, we put it there, and again, there are rhythms and stuff like that. I'm just trying to get the scientific part, the actual acoustical things that are going to affect the orchestration. I have the ending, and then I want to start getting those midway points along the way that I previously mentioned. So let's focus on the first change of harmony. Again, for you, a change of harmony may not require a change of orchestration, okay? In this particular style, we stayed in one harmony for 5 beats, and then suddenly we change, so it is quite significant, okay? So same strategy. I set the cellos and double basses. Then I place the violin 1. I have a B natural to the D in the basses, okay? So I was hearing that 6 plus several octaves interval. That is different from having the 4th or the 3rd or the 2nd, okay? They're all very different. And again, you can't do this for every single chord, okay? It just would take forever, okay? And you would lose sight of the larger picture. But for the major destinations along the way, do this, and then when you do the voice leading, you will find, provided that you have a reasonable level in harmony, okay? So I have the outer voices, and then I got the viola. Notice that we have a D to a B natural between cello and viola, so I decided I want a 6 distance. If you saw my how to solve one of my previous videos, I originally had a G in the viola, and I felt it was too dark, plus there was problems with orchestration in general. And so this updated version, notice I have a 6, so I'm very conscientious of keeping that distance a certain length, okay? Notice that the violin 2 is on F and G, so it has a unison with the violin 1, has a unison with the viola. We have the violin 1 on thirds, okay, in the upper voice. Violin 2 is on F and G, so I'm bringing out a distance. This is conscious, okay? I did this on purpose. I'm hearing very minutely. Notice the viola is on the tritone. Didn't have to be the tritone, but this is what's possible when you spend more time on your destination points, okay, provided you have a good level in harmony for the voice leading, because then you want to spend very little time just right itself, okay? Real quick, I just want to show something in a little more detail. So here we can see, I just isolated a chord. We see I have the distance from the violin 1 to the double bass, and I have the distance from the cello to the viola. So just remind everyone, outer voices, which comes directly from harmony, okay, comes directly from harmony, and then we have the distance from the bass to the next voice. In harmony, that would be the distance from the bass to the tenor, but in this case, this is actual music. Be careful about trying to apply harmony too much when you do orchestration. Just focus on the orchestration. Just let the harmony take over your subconscious. All right. Finally, I just want to mention the voice leading. So notice in the voice leading, I have the violin 1 going GB to F, C, instead of going to the A flat. And the violin 2 is F, G, and then going to C and A flat. So I have unnecessary leaps, shall we say, right? We have the violin 1 has that 5th F, C, violin 2 has that C, A flat. So that's really stark kind of orchestration I want. And notice that the violin 1 jumping F to C, that's unnecessary. But that's because I have a basic level in harmony, good level, and I'm hearing, actually, I want that rustic quality. This is what you have when you spend the time on these major points, okay? Here, in this other possibility, this would be more, French would call it l'orchestration banale. So it's just more, it's just more functional, okay? And it works, but it's not super, I just don't find it super exciting. So again, spend more time on orchestrating the major destination points, and then you can get an orchestration that you really want. Okay, that's all I really wanted to share with you guys today. So I hope you find that really useful. Remember, as always, the most important thing is to get that bad boy done. Finish that piece. Don't try to implement too many things at once. Get it done, get it performed. And those of you who want to apply to the competition, just if you want to get done quickly, you get those extra points. Okay. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.